The notification didn't scream for attention. It was just a quiet little email alert on my work phone, easily lost among the hundreds that piled up daily. But the sender's name, an address I didn't recognize, snagged my eye. My thumb hovered over the screen. It was a Tuesday mid-afternoon, the kind of time when the markets were buzzing, but my corner of the world, the quiet back office where I still maintained oversight, felt strangely still. I remember staring at the preview text, a cold dread pooling in my stomach, even before I fully processed the words. He's leaving you for me and our future. Enjoy your empty life. My fingers trembled slightly, but I didn't open it. Not yet. My gaze drifted around my home office, a space designed to look like a support station for Lucas, but which was, in fact, the command center I'd built over 15 years. Framed articles on the walls celebrated Horizon Capital, the investment firm Lucas co-founded. His smiling face beamed from photos, shaking hands at conferences, clinking champagne glasses after securing a major deal. And somewhere, just out of frame in every picture that mattered, was me, Riley, the woman who wrote the algorithms that powered their success, the quiet force behind the numbers. 15 years. 12 years building Horizon Capital, from a desperate idea sketched on napkins in a cramped apartment to a name whispered with respect on Wall Street. While Lucas charmed clients and worked the room, I was the architect of the engine under the hood. That email, it was a direct hit. A taunt. But the word future in Stella's smug little message, combined with the icy finality of empty life, didn't just speak of a personal betrayal. It resonated with the quiet financial irregularities I'd been noticing for months, subtle glitches in the data streams only someone who built the system would spot. I took a deep breath, the air suddenly feeling thin. Stella wanted to humiliate me, to break me. But her timing was off. By the time she hit send, I wasn't a heartbroken wife staring at infidelity. I was a strategist presented with a hostile takeover attempt, and I knew exactly where to start fighting back. I didn't need to see the photos. Stella's words were enough to confirm the personal betrayal. But her specific phrase, and our future, linked it inextricably to the financial anomalies I'd been tracking. Lucas wasn't just having an affair. He was building a new life with her, likely funded by the very empire we had built, the one I'd engineered with my algorithms and data security systems. For years, Lucas had been the charismatic face of Horizon Capital, the dealmaker in the spotlight. And I was our secret weapon, as he liked to put it with a pat on my head, too valuable behind the curtain. It was a narrative I'd accepted, even embraced in the early days. My passion was the intricate dance of numbers, the elegance of algorithms predicting market shifts, the ironclad logic of secure systems. His was the performance, the handshake, the closing. We were a team, supposedly building our future. But the hours slowly faded. Anniversaries were missed for critical meetings. Vacations were postponed until after this next big deal. The family we'd planned, always tomorrow, always after the firm hit another milestone. I poured my energy into refining the algorithms, securing client data, building the complex infrastructure that gave Horizon its edge, while Lucas collected the accolades and built his network. He'd kiss my forehead, tell me I was brilliant, indispensable for the firm. Never for us as equals in life. The first hint that something was deeply wrong wasn't the faint scent of a different perfume on his jacket or the unexplained business trips that didn't line up with industry calendars. Those came later, confirming the personal infidelity. The first real alarm sounded within the code itself, in the systems I knew better than my own reflection. Months before Stella's email, I noticed small, almost imperceptible deviations in access logs from Lucas's user profile. Queries about obscure offshore financial structures. Small transfers routed through unusual intermediary accounts. Things that looked like standard, albeit complex, transactions to an outside eye, but which pinged on my internal radar because I'd designed the system's monitoring protocols. They were like tiny vibrations in the foundation I had poured. I started watching quietly. Every night, after Lucas had gone to bed, I would slip into my office, not to work on algorithms, but to pull logs, trace transaction IDs, and cross-reference data points. My accounting background, combined with my deep technical knowledge, made me uniquely equipped for this particular kind of forensic accounting. I built a hidden spreadsheet, documenting each suspicious activity, each unusual query. It was a chilling mosaic, painting a picture of planned financial maneuvering, not just random spending. Sometimes, interacting with Lucas during this time felt surreal. He'd talk about the firm's bright future, our shared dreams, completely oblivious that I was watching his digital ghost systematically dismantle that very future, piece by piece, from within the network I controlled. "You look tired, Riley," he'd say, barely glancing up from his phone. "Working on something complex?" "Just refining some parameters." I'd lie, the lie tasting like ash. I was refining the parameters of my own escape. That night, after Stella's email arrived, the vague suspicions and coded warnings coalesced into a terrifying certainty. This wasn't just an affair. This was a meticulously planned financial betrayal, designed to leave me adrift while Lucas sailed into a new life funded by the very system I had built and protected. My stomach churned, but my mind was sharp cold. I had to find the full plan. I had to know the scale of his deception before I could act. Armed with the grim certainty from Stella's email and the chilling data from my monitoring, I knew I had to find concrete proof. Digital breadcrumbs were damning, but I needed the blueprint. Lucas was smart, but like many in his position, he relied on layers of perceived security rather than true vigilance. I suspected he would keep the core details of his plan close, likely in a place he thought was impenetrable. My search began in the digital realm, targeting areas Lucas frequented or had recently accessed from his personal devices connected to the firm's network. I spent hours in my home office, working late into the night under the guise of deep work on new trading models. Using my intimate knowledge of the system's architecture, including backdoors and administrator overrides I'd built in the early days for genuine emergencies, I probed deeper. I scanned encrypted drives he used, analyzed metadata for hidden files, and searched for anomalies in his cloud storage sinks. The breakthrough came after 3 tense nights. I found it nested within a seemingly innocuous folder on a backup server Lucas rarely accessed, a folder labeled Synergy Model V3. It wasn't a trading model. It was a heavily encrypted archive. Decrypting it was a challenge, requiring a combination of brute force techniques and exploiting a minor vulnerability I'd intentionally left in a long-forgotten encryption library years ago, knowing it might one day be useful. My hands shook slightly as the file finally unlocked. Inside was everything. Detailed schematics for diverting funds from the new Ascension Fund, the massive, highly leveraged fund Lucas was set to launch Horizon Capital's next big leap. Complex diagrams showed multi-layered transfers through shell corporations in offshore tax havens, ultimately leading to accounts in Stella's name and a property purchase plan in a country with no extradition treaty. There were projected timelines, liquidity analysis, and communications logs between Lucas and Stella discussing the clean extraction. But the cruelest detail was a drafted email, saved but never sent. It was addressed to me. "Riley, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Things got complicated here. The firm will need your help sorting out some discrepancies in the Ascension Fund. I know you can handle it. I found a new path, and I need to take it. Consider the house yours. Good luck." He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to steal millions from investors, dismantle the firm we built, and leave me to deal with the regulatory fallout and potentially criminal charges, all while he sipped cocktails on a beach with his accomplice. The woman who had been the technical backbone of his success would be left to face the creditors and the consequences. The cold fury I'd felt before turned into a burning, absolute certainty. Lucas Mercer wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a financial terrorist, and I was his intended fall guy. I copied every single file, every diagram, every communication log. I saved them to multiple secure off-site locations, encrypted cloud storage under a false identity, a physical hard drive in a safety deposit box Lucas didn't know about. I meticulously cleared my tracks, deleting log entries of my access, restoring file timestamps to their original state. The evidence was undeniable. It wasn't just proof of an affair. It was proof of grand theft and fraud, planned meticulously by the man who slept beside me. The shock was immense, the pain sharp, but it was quickly eclipsed by a singular, driving purpose: retribution. Lucas had underestimated me for the last time. He thought I was just the quiet wife behind the scenes. He was about to learn that the architect knows exactly how to bring down the structure she designed. With the full scope of Lucas's deceit laid bare, My focus shifted from investigation to execution. The time for passive monitoring was over. Now, I had to weaponize everything I knew, everything I had built. This wasn't about getting my share of the money. It was about ensuring he got none of the illicit gains and faced the consequences of his actions. My first step, taken even before I fully processed the hidden plan, was securing my own financial independence. Over the years, I had quietly invested a portion of my own earnings, separate from our joint accounts Lucas managed. Now, I moved swiftly and decisively, transferring these funds into untraceable digital assets and accounts held under layers of legal protection Lucas would never penetrate. This wasn't stealing. This was finally drawing a hard line around what was mine, built by my own work, ensuring I wouldn't be left completely destitute amidst the coming storm. The real weapon, however, lay within the Horizon capital system itself. Knowing Lucas's plan relied on complex, time-sensitive transfers of leveraged assets from the Ascension Fund, I began setting my traps. Using my administrator access, I didn't alter the fund's balance directly. That would be obvious theft. Instead, I subtly tweaked the system's parameters for reporting, compliance checks, and interinstitutional transfer protocols specifically related to the asset classes Lucas planned to target. I designed these changes to be dormant until a specific set of conditions was met, conditions that would align perfectly with Lucas attempting to initiate his final transfer sequence. Think of it like planting tripwires. When Lucas tried to move the money, the system wouldn't just stop him. It would flag the transactions as high risk, trigger automated alerts to internal compliance, which I knew were linked to external regulatory bodies like the SEC, and potentially initiate automated margin calls or asset freezes based on the unusual activity and the fund's leverage structure. My code wouldn't steal his money. It would scream fraud to the financial world the moment he made his move. Building this digital demise required immense concentration and discretion. I worked late nights, concealing my activity within routine system maintenance logs. My technical skills, once used to build Lucas up, were now meticulously crafted to dismantle him. Next, I began strategically planting seeds of doubt outside the digital realm. I reached out to Thomas, the respected former partner who had semi-retired but still held significant influence and, crucially, an unwavering ethical code. I requested a meeting under the guise of seeking his advice on a complex technical challenge related to the Ascension Fund's data architecture and regulatory compliance, an issue plausible only for someone with my role. During our conversation, I carefully steered the discussion towards potential vulnerabilities in highly leveraged funds and the importance of stringent oversight on cross-border transfers. I voiced hypothetical concerns that mirrored the specifics of Lucas's plan, subtly suggesting that lax controls could theoretically lead to devastating outcomes, both financially and legally. Thomas, with his sharp mind and experience, picked up on the underlying unease, promising to keep an eye on things. The seed was planted. I also had a brief, carefully worded conversation with Michael, Lucas's less technically savvy partner. I mentioned, seemingly in passing, how incredibly complex the Ascension Fund structure was proving to be from a data management perspective, and how crucial it was that all partners were fully aligned on the compliance protocols, given the regulatory scrutiny on such funds. I didn't accuse Lucas, but I introduced a subtle note of concern about the complexity and the need for vigilant oversight, perhaps prompting Michael to look a bit closer at the fund's structure himself, albeit without the full picture. My technical arsenal was ready, my financial flank secured, and the groundwork laid with key figures who would be receptive to the evidence when it came. The tension was building, the waiting almost unbearable, but I knew the perfect moment to strike was imminent. The Ascension Fund pitch, Lucas's grand performance before his planned disappearance. The final weeks leading up to the Ascension Fund pitch were the most surreal of my life. I was living a meticulously crafted lie, a performance of wifely support while simultaneously orchestrating my husband's financial ruin. Each morning, I'd make Lucas his coffee, listen to him talk about his schedule, often involving meetings I knew were with Stella or preparatory steps for his escape, and nod along, a pleasant, empty smile fixed on my face. The psychological toll was immense. There were moments, sitting across from him at the dinner table, where the sheer disconnect was breathtaking. He would talk about our future, the success of the firm, completely oblivious that the woman across from him knew every sordid detail of his plan and was actively working to destroy him. I'd feel flashes of the old hurt, the years of sacrifice, the dreams we'd shared, and then the cold, hard anger would return, stealing my resolve. He saw me as a problem to be discarded. I saw him as a threat to be neutralized. Maintaining the facade required constant vigilance. I continued my deep work late into the night, finalizing the triggers in the system, reviewing the evidence packets, ensuring redundancy in my plan. There were close calls. One evening, Lucas came into my office unexpectedly while I had a critical system log open. I managed to switch screens just in time, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Still at it, Riley?" he asked, peering at my screen briefly before his eyes glazed over. The technical details bored him. "Don't overdo it." The casual dismissal was almost comical given the circumstances. I enlisted Layla for a small, crucial task. She was a bright, dedicated junior analyst I'd mentored, someone who saw the real work that went into the firm's success and, I suspected, had quietly noticed how I was often sidelined. I asked her to perform a seemingly innocuous system check on a specific data feed at a precise time during the day of the pitch, something I couldn't do remotely without leaving a trace Lucas might spot. I framed it as a test of a new monitoring protocol. Layla, trusting me implicitly, agreed without question, her small act of assistance becoming a vital cog in my complex machine. Lucas, meanwhile, grew increasingly arrogant as the pitch date approached. He was confident, dismissive, already mentally on his way to his new life. He'd talk about the inevitable success of the Ascension Fund, the massive liquidity it would generate, unknowingly highlighting the very mechanisms I had targeted with my traps. He was walking towards a cliff edge, blindfolded by his own hubris, and I had laid the path. One night, just days before the pitch, he came home with an expensive bottle of champagne. "To us, Riley," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "Couldn't have built any of this without you." He raised his glass, a rare display of affection that felt utterly hollow. "After the Ascension pitch, things will be different. Maybe we can finally take that trip you always wanted." I clinked my glass against his, the sound like fragile glass hitting steel. "That sounds wonderful, Lucas," I said, meeting his eyes with a practiced smile. "I've always wanted to see the world." The irony tasted like poison, but I swallowed it down. He thought this was his final manipulation, making me feel valued just before discarding me. He had no idea it was our last toast, and the only trip he'd be taking after the pitch was a swift, unavoidable fall. The day of the Ascension Fund pitch arrived like a perfectly timed storm. The air in the grand conference room felt charged, a mix of anticipation and the silent hum of immense wealth converging. The room itself was a marvel of modern corporate design, sleek lines, panoramic views of the city skyline, and state-of-the-art presentation technology, including multiple large screens displaying market data and presentation slides. I had selected the venue myself, ensuring its infrastructure would seamlessly integrate with the technical triggers I had planned. Key players arrived. Eleanor Schmidt, a formidable presence representing a major investment consortium, took her seat in the front row, her expression sharp and evaluative. Thomas was there, sitting quietly but observing everything with an intensity one recognized. Michael moved through the crowd, looking perhaps a little nervous but focused on his role as supportive partner. Lucas took the stage, looking every bit the confident, charismatic leader. He wore a tailored suit, his smile wide, his gaze commanding. He began his presentation, his voice smooth, outlining the structure of the Ascension Fund, the brilliant strategy, the projected returns. He spoke of innovation, trust, and the future of Horizon Capital, every word a calculated lie given the contents of the encrypted files I'd found. I was positioned discreetly in the back of the room, near the technical control console, ostensibly there to ensure smooth presentation flow. Outwardly, I was calm, composed, the picture of the supportive wife and dedicated firm member. Inwardly, my senses were heightened, my focus singular. My laptop, connected wirelessly to the presentation system and the firm's internal network, was open, displaying not presentation cues, but the command interface for the triggers I'd set. Lucas reached the critical point in his presentation, discussing the fund's unique liquidity structure and the mechanisms for asset allocation and transfer. This was it. His words aligned with the parameters I'd set. With a few quiet keystrokes, almost imperceptible, I activated the sequence. The effect was not a dramatic system crash, but something far more insidious, more public. First, a small, official-looking notification banner flashed across the bottom of one of the secondary screens displaying market data, an automated alert from a prominent clearinghouse regarding an anomaly in the referenced asset class. It was subtle, designed to catch the eye of financiers in the room. Then, Lucas's meticulously crafted presentation slides froze mid-transition on the main screen, replaced moments later by an automated system message. Access to Ascension Fund transfer protocol restricted. Review required. It wasn't an error. It was the system, activated by my trigger, enforcing a protocol Lucas had tried to bypass in his plan. Simultaneously, I initiated the final step. With another few keystrokes, timed precisely, the comprehensive evidence packets, the decrypted files, the log anomalies, the communication traces were released. They landed instantly in the inboxes of Thomas, Eleanor Schmidt, Michael, key regulatory contacts I had identified, and several prominent financial journalists I had discreetly vetted. Lucas faltered mid-sentence. His eyes darted from the screens to the technical console area. The color drained from his face as he realized what was happening. The room, moments before filled with polite attention, began to buzz. Investors began checking their phones, reacting to the emails arriving in real time. Eleanor Schmidt gasped audibly, staring at her tablet with widening eyes, then glared at Lucas with pure, unadulterated fury. Michael looked utterly bewildered, then horrified as he read the subject lines on his own screen. Lucas stammered, attempting to recover, to brush it off as a technical glitch. But the automated alerts kept flashing, the system restriction message remained, and the whispers in the room grew louder as people absorbed the contents of the emails. His eyes finally landed on me. For a split second, I saw it all there. The dawning horror, the disbelief, the betrayal, and the chilling realization that I had orchestrated his downfall. The man who had built his empire on lies, who thought he could discard me and steal with impunity, was exposed, live on stage, in front of the very people whose trust he had shattered. The chaos erupted. Investors rose from their seats, shouting questions. Thomas approached the stage, his expression grim. Michael looked like he might faint. Lucas stood frozen, his confident facade crumbling, his mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. I closed my laptop, the screens going dark. My work was done. I didn't stay to watch the full extent of Lucas's public unraveling, though I heard snippets of the ensuing chaos as I quietly made my way towards the exit. Voices raised in anger, security being called, Lucas's desperate, pleading tone mixed with rising panic. Walking through the opulent lobby, leaving the scene of the wreckage behind me, a profound sense of calm settled over me. It wasn't the triumphant glee I might have expected. It was something colder, heavier, but ultimately liberating. The weight of months of suspicion, of hidden investigation, of living a lie, lifted from my shoulders. I thought about the early days, the shared dreams, the belief that we were building something together. That life was gone, revealed as a beautiful, intricate lie built on my foundation but meant only for his benefit. Lucas had seen me as a means to an end, a technical resource to be exploited and then discarded. He had fundamentally misunderstood who I was. He thought I was just the supportive wife. He forgot I was the architect of the entire system. Out on the street, the city air felt crisp and clean. The noise of traffic, the distant sirens, the murmur of passers-by. It was the sound of the real world, a world I was re-entering not as Lucas Mercer's wife, but as Riley, the woman who had built an empire, seen its corruption, and possessed the intelligence and courage to bring it crashing down when it threatened to consume her. I pulled out my phone, the one Lucas didn't know about, programmed with untraceable numbers. There were already messages piling up, notifications from regulatory bodies triggered by my system flags, inquiries from journalists who had received the evidence, even a brief, stunned message from Thomas. The fallout was immediate and total. His scream, or whatever desperate, broken sound he made when the full weight of his ruin hit him, wasn't something I heard physically. But I could imagine it. The sound of the man who thought he had absolute control, realizing he had lost everything, courtesy of the woman he underestimated. That imagined sound, echoing in the quiet space within me, was the purest, sweetest sound of my life. I had been the quiet force behind the scenes, the architect in the shadows. They said my genius was best kept hidden. But sometimes, the person behind the curtain holds all the power. And when pushed too far, she can decide to step into the light, not for applause, but to ensure justice is served, and that the man who tried to erase her is left with nothing but the ruins he created. My empire was gone, but I had reclaimed myself, my value, and my future. And that was worth more than all the money Lucas tried to steal.